Massive turns in Russia after Putin seemingly signed a law yesterday that bans Bitcoin mining in 10 out of nearly 80 regions here in Russia. Now here comes the twist. The finance minister of Russia is clearly stating that Bitcoin is being used for international trade, meaning international payments from the Russian side as well. And the craziest part is, if Bitcoin is being used for international payments from Russia, it means that Russia must have either bought a ton of Bitcoin or has been mining Bitcoin for a long time. So one of those two things has to be true. If used for trade, they need significant amounts, not just a few Bitcoin, as trade involves serious money. This means that one of the two must clearly be the case here. And if it's being used for international trade, then it can't just be that they have a few Bitcoin lying around. It has to be really significant amounts, because international trade means you're not just sending $1,000 back and forth, you know? It's about serious business. If you think about it in the context of trade with China, for example, or with other BRICS nations, it means that they're probably moving thousands of Bitcoin around. Plus, it also suggests that not only does Russia have Bitcoin, but it's very likely that other BRICS nations must have Bitcoin as well. With other BRICS nations, this means that you are probably sending thousands of Bitcoin back and forth. Additionally, this also means that not only Russia has Bitcoin, but very likely other BRICS nations must also have Bitcoin. Whether it's China or not, we don't know for sure, but the finance minister has now officially confirmed that Bitcoin is being used in Russia for international payments and trade. And that's somehow very, very strange, because we're seeing a kind of back and forth, and I'm also sorry that such contradictory reports are coming out now. Yesterday, there was a message saying that Bitcoin mining was no longer allowed, and now it's like, hey, we use Bitcoin for international trade, and the finance minister even confirms this. The source is Reuters, so all this information is coming from them, and they're referring to a TV interview with the finance minister where he clearly stated this. There's also a quote from the finance minister saying that it's possible to use Bitcoin that we've mined here in Russia, said Siluanov, the Russian minister. So it's not that they bought Bitcoin, it's that they've mined it. Now the question is whether they also bought Bitcoin on top of that, but it seems they definitely have Bitcoin in their holdings. So here it says they didn't buy Bitcoin, but here it says they meant Bitcoins. The question now is whether they also bought Bitcoin, but in any case, they seem to have Bitcoin in their inventory. And once again, it's really important to note that if they're engaging in international trade, those amounts are likely not going to be small, but rather large sums. There was also an official announcement that in recent years, there had been a lot more Bitcoin mining in Russia than people thought. And just yesterday, we had the Bitcoin mining ban, and my theory was that they might be trying to exclude the population from Bitcoin mining a bit, because Bitcoin mining is really heavily regulated in Russia. So even if you're in a region where Bitcoin mining is allowed, it's still really heavily regulated, and you need a permit for that. And probably not everyone is going to get that permit. That's why they often impose Bitcoin mining bans, like what was done in China, to effectively exclude the population from Bitcoin, while they themselves take advantage of Bitcoin's benefits. Now, some people have said, okay, maybe I portrayed that a bit too dramatically yesterday because there are just energy issues in some regions, let's say. Energy may stop Bitcoin mining. Russia's rules mean mining isn't allowed freely. But even if there are energy issues, Bitcoin mining here in Russia is still not really tolerated because the regulations are strict. You have to register, do KYC, and get a license for it. So you can't just mine Bitcoin freely. I mean, a lot of people are still going to do it. Many will just operate in the illegal sector. Some people have commented below, hey, my buddies are all mining over there in Russia. They just do it because nobody cares. There's no police, no one checks it. It's such a big country that you can't really monitor it all, and it all happens off the grid. Yeah, that might be true. A lot of it probably happens under the radar, off the grid. And then the finance minister said something else very interesting, namely that such transactions are already taking place. We believe that they should be expanded and further developed. I'm confident that this will be the case next year. So it seems like Russia is really going all in on Bitcoin now. That's basically the statement that Putin has made here. Putin said that you can't stop Bitcoin, you can't ban it. That's why a lot of people were so surprised about the Bitcoin ban. Maybe they wanted to. I still don't quite know what that was all about, whether they're trying to confuse people or if it's just uncoordinated. Like now the Bitcoin ban is coming, and the finance minister hasn't coordinated with Putin, which means one is saying A and the other is saying B. It doesn't really make sense. There's no clear line. But if that's really the case, and the finance minister isn't pulling our leg and is actually telling the truth, because that's a possibility too, politicians and finance ministers can just spout nonsense. They could say something like Donald Trump is buying even more Bitcoin just to throw the US off the scent or something. I'm not assuming that he's lying or anything like that. But you always have to keep that in mind, I'd say. But if the finance minister is really right, then this could actually lead to Russia doubling down on Bitcoin. And if they expand the transactions for international trade, that also means they'll need more Bitcoin. If they need more Bitcoin, then firstly it means they either have to buy the Bitcoin or they have to mine the Bitcoin. If they mine Bitcoin, then there is less available supply, then sooner or later this will also lead to the Bitcoin price rising. If they buy Bitcoin, then there's also less supply on the market, which will lead to the price of Bitcoin going up. Russia and Putin are driving Bitcoin prices up. During the bear market, the hash rate rose as nations engaged in negative mining, buying Bitcoin at a premium. High electricity costs led to secret Bitcoin acquisition, building reserves. And that's also the theory that a lot of people had in the bear market, that the hash rate went up so much even though we had a bear market, which somehow couldn't be justified. You could only explain it by saying that some big nations were engaging in negative mining, meaning they started mining Bitcoin anonymously to actually buy Bitcoin at a premium, over market prices. In some regions, electricity might have been so expensive that they were even paying premiums just to get their hands on Bitcoin anonymously, building up their Bitcoin reserves in secret. So I'm not really sure what the situation is like in Russia. Could be that there are plenty of places where you don't even have to engage in negative mining, where the electricity costs are low enough that you can mine pretty well. But then again, they might have to restrict mining for the general population. They might say, okay, for our big Bitcoin stash in Russia, we're using the energy, we're taking all the cheap electricity to buy Bitcoin. But since we're facing power shortages now, we're just going to ban Bitcoin mining for regular folks. So there's still a chance that they could open up to Bitcoin, but right now it seems like the main goal is to fill their own pockets first. It's like the government or the state is just trying to get rich off this, and only after that might the general population see some benefits. Because Bitcoin still isn't an official currency. Bitcoin isn't official in Russia. Payments aren't allowed, but holding is with mining restrictions. So it seems like the government, the state, is just trying to fill their own pockets first, and only after that might the general population get a piece of the pie. Because Bitcoin still isn't an official payment method. So you still can't offer Bitcoin payments or anything like that in Russia. That's still not allowed. But you can hold it as an asset, you can hodl it, and there are strong restrictions on Bitcoin mining. It's also said that Russian companies are now using Bitcoin for international payments. After the legal changes allowed its use to bypass Western sanctions, Finance Minister Anton Siluanov announced on Wednesday, so this is the next important topic, that it's clear sanctions are being circumvented because Russia is excluded from all international financial vehicles and systems, making it really tough for them to engage in international trade. If you're completely excluded from the financial system, then you have no choice but to use Bitcoin. That means anyone can use Bitcoin, whether you're an enemy, a friend, or whatever. It doesn't matter if you're green, tall, big, brown, or white. Everyone can use Bitcoin, and Russia can use Bitcoin too. I know a lot of people criticize this too. Often, when I discuss things with professors or whatever, they just say, oh, but Bitcoin is really bad because you can't impose sanctions on any enemies like Russia or China or whoever. Yeah, but that's just the fact. Bitcoin is also for your opponents, for your enemies. And I wouldn't say that Russia is the enemy or anything like that. That's just a narrative that gets pushed sometimes. I don't want to get involved in the political stuff, but there always needs to be someone who plays God. So there always has to be someone who labels someone else as a terrorist, and then you can say, okay, that's the enemy and we're excluding them. And often in history, it has simply come out that many, many dozens of nations, even if we look at the USA, what kind of false flag attacks they have launched, what kinds of nations they have denigrated, what kinds of people they have hurt. Nelson Mandela was on the terror list for a long time, didn't do anything major, or, for example, Julian Assange has also been considered a terrorist by the US at times, and then there's Ross Ulbricht and all sorts of other people. You can debate all of that, but often there's just arbitrariness happening. And that kind of arbitrariness can't happen with Bitcoin because no one can play God there. No one can say, this person is okay, they can make transactions, and that person isn't okay. And now check this out. I actually found something really interesting that ties in perfectly with this. Martin Sellner had over 90 bank accounts closed or something like that. I also did an interview with him here on our channel, and Kalja, who has stocks on his mind, actually said something really, really interesting about this that you all need to check out. Kalja has really become the ultimate Bitcoin guy. I'm not sure if he's a maxi, but he's definitely a Bitcoin bull. He's really gone deep down the rabbit hole, so thumbs up for what Kalja is doing. His channel is linked below, and he's doing some amazing work. Now check this out.
Then the host said, yeah, that's a right-wing conservative newspaper. And Palmer goes, oh, right, you don't talk to the right. And then the woman says, good answer, yeah, with the right, sure, but not with the far right. Well, she didn't call us that. She didn't call Cato as a magazine that either, but she threw this term in there so that the label would stick.
Yeah, it's so crazy, as I'm hearing this, without meaning to carry that stigma myself since I don't know the person personally, namely Martin Sellner, but do you know him? Do you know the Bitcoin hotel guy? No. He's just this super chill Bitcoin fan who's always posting pictures of his papaya plantations somewhere in southern Ecuador. He's such a lively guy, and it's awesome because I had a conversation with him at the Invest Mess about Bitcoin and stuff. And he uploaded a full hour-long interview with Martin Sellner on his YouTube channel, and it didn't get taken down, no way. And he just chats so casually with him, and he really doesn't care at all. It just is. Yeah, I'm just a peace, love, and happiness kind of guy, and now let's talk about Bitcoin and crypto. So I brought in the crypto expert for the camera. I have no idea. I didn't watch the conversation anyway, but I find it funny, like the idea of who you talk to or who you don't talk to. And I actually think that talking is always the best way to achieve certain solutions. I mean, if you say you're not going to talk to certain people, what do you do then? So you can't just get rid of it. That topic is over. At least I hope so. And that's why, 2001, why it is. I always thought that human communication would be better than just not doing it. But hey, that's just how they are.
But that's a very interesting perspective. I can just go along with what Carl says because really, why should you shut yourself off from certain people? Why shouldn't you talk to certain people? It's the same with Bitcoin. Why shouldn't certain people be allowed to participate in the Bitcoin network? Bitcoin is permissionless, and that's how you should talk to everyone. At least that's my insight. You don't have to agree either, but that's exactly what we need. More debate culture so that you can talk to other people who might think differently than you do. The craziest thing is that I often end up in interviews with people who have different views than I do, where I don't agree with them, where I sometimes even clash with them, where I might get upset or think, how can they think that way? Or how do they come to those conclusions? And those are often the moments when I learn the most because that's when you learn empathy, feeling into other people and questioning your own standpoint. And that's why I don't get why we have this kind of contact, guilt and all that. And then when you talk to certain people, like with Martin Sellner, you get accused of, wow, you can't talk to people like that. What are you thinking, blah, blah, blah. So you really have to stay grounded. These are just regular people who, I don't know, they get up in the morning, they go to the bathroom, they eat their papayas or their melons or whatever. These are just regular people. To simply say, hey, just because he has this or that view, I'm not going to talk to him anymore. I'm going to cancel him now, lock him up, shut down his account or whatever. I just think that's over the top. Sure, there are boundaries somewhere, and maybe we need to define those boundaries. But in my opinion, the line is drawn way too low here, and we should be talking to each other a lot more. But feel free to let me know in the comments how you see it. If you want to buy censorship-resistant money here that no one can take away from you, 2001 permission-free, then take a look below. I'll give you a link to Bitcoin. The easiest way to buy Bitcoin in Europe. It's really simple. Here, with the code Bitcoin Hotel, you can still get up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. See you later, folks. Peace out, 1000.